My husband's mother sneered. You'll never be as good as Anna, your husband's ex-lover. I stood up and said, then tell her to pay all your bills. I'm done funding your lifestyle. My husband's mom froze. What money? We never got a single dollar from you. That's when I realized something was very wrong. My mother-in-law Barbara sneered at me over her birthday cake, that familiar look of disgust twisting her face. You'll never be as good as Anna, Dennis's ex-lover. She had class. She had beauty. She understood what Dennis needed. I stood up from the dinner table, my hands surprisingly steady. Then tell Anna to pay all your bills. I'm done funding your lifestyle. Barbara's sneer froze, replaced by confusion. What money? We never got a single dollar from you. That's when I realized something was very, very wrong. Before we continue unraveling this financial betrayal, thank you for being here. If you believe family should mean honesty, not deception, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps these important stories reach others. Now let's see what was really happening with my money. But let me back up 18 months, to when I still believed in the fairy tale of marrying into a difficult family that would eventually accept me. My mornings at Hartford Financial started at 7 sharp. I'd arrive before the security guard finished his coffee, taking the elevator to the 14th floor where my corner office overlooked downtown. The view was everything I'd worked for, glass towers reflecting the sunrise, the city waking up beneath me. I analyzed portfolios worth more than most people would see in 10 lifetimes, tracking derivatives and catching discrepancies that saved our clients millions. Sarah, my assistant, would bring green tea in the Tiffany mug Dennis bought me for our anniversary. The Henderson account has some interesting movement, she'd say, and I'd dive into spreadsheets that told stories of money flowing through channels it shouldn't. I could spot financial fraud from 1,000 yards away in someone else's life. The irony still burns. Dennis would text me around 10, usually something sweet about lunch plans or reminding me about dinner with his parents. He worked as a freelance consultant. Business strategies, workflow optimization, the kind of vague descriptions that sounded impressive but generated unpredictable income. Some months he'd land a big client and take me to celebrate at expensive restaurants. Other months I'd quietly cover our mortgage, his car payment, and the credit cards without mentioning it. We'd been married 3 years, together for 5. He was charming in that way that made you feel like the only person in the room, with dark eyes that crinkled when he laughed and hands that always found mine in crowds. I loved how he'd dance with me in our kitchen while dinner cooked, how he'd leave notes in my lunch bag, how he made me feel chosen. Every Saturday we'd make the drive to Queens to visit his parents. 40 minutes of holding hands while listening to whatever podcast he was obsessed with that week. But the moment we pulled into their building's parking lot, something would shift. His hand would slip from mine, his shoulders would tense, and by the time we climbed the 3 flights to their rent-controlled apartment, he'd transformed into someone else's son. Robert, his father, would answer the door with genuine warmth. Janet, you look beautiful as always. He'd take the wine I brought, always the same $15 Merlot that Barbara never drank but I kept bringing anyway. The flowers I'd picked up from the corner bodega would disappear into a vase, barely acknowledged. Barbara would be holding court in her living room, surrounded by photos of Dennis from every stage of life except the recent ones that included me. She'd look up from whatever she was pretending to read and offer that tight smile that never reached her eyes. Oh, you're here. Dennis, did you see the article about Anna's promotion? She's doing so well at the nonprofit. Remember how she used to organize those charity galas? And there it would begin, the Anna Show. Anna's new job helping underprivileged youth. Anna's volunteer work at the animal shelter. Anna's magical ability to make Barbara's arthritis pain disappear just by entering the room. The woman had been gone for 4 years, but her ghost sat at every dinner table, hung in the air of every conversation. Anna made the most amazing lasagna. Barbara would sigh over my carefully prepared casserole. She had this special ingredient. Love, I think. Dennis would shift uncomfortably, maybe squeeze my knee under the table but never speak up. Never say, Mom, Janet's right here. Never mention that Anna had cheated on him with his former best friend, which is why they'd broken up. That detail had been conveniently erased from family history. The financial situation came up gradually, then all at once. First, it was comments about fixed incomes not keeping up with inflation. Then, specific mentions of medical costs. Barbara's arthritis required injections that Medicare only partially covered. Robert's heart medication cost $300 a month after insurance. Their rent had gone up twice in 2 years, and Robert had started working part-time at a hardware store at 70 to make ends meet. One Thursday evening I was deep in quarterly reports when Dennis appeared in my home office. He had that look, the one that meant he needed something but didn't want to ask. He sat on the edge of my desk playing with my stapler. Mom called today. Dad's been skipping his medication to make it last longer. I looked up from my screen. That's dangerous. He needs those pills. I know. Dennis ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I'd learned meant anxiety. They're drowning, Janet. Mom's too proud to ask for help, especially from you, but they need it. How much? Maybe $2,000 a month? Just temporarily until they figure something out. I studied his face, saw real worry there. These were his parents, and despite Barbara's coldness toward me, Robert had always been kind. We can do that. There's one thing, Dennis said, not meeting my eyes. Mom doesn't understand online banking, gets confused by all the technology. And Dad's pride, he can't handle taking money from his son's wife. If I could receive it and pass it along, tell them it's from my consulting work picking up. It made sense at the time. Barbara was 71, always complaining about computers and smartphones. Robert was old-school Italian, the kind of man who still insisted on paying for dinner even when he could barely afford it. So I agreed, setting up automatic transfers from our joint account to Dennis's personal one, each carefully labeled in my spreadsheet. Barbara's arthritis treatment, Robert's medication, apartment maintenance. $2,000 a month. Then $2,500 when the rent increased. Small amounts to someone analyzing million-dollar portfolios, but they added up. So this was family. This was what you did for family, even when that family spent every dinner reminding you how inferior you were to a woman who'd been gone for years. 3 months had passed since I'd started sending money, and the transfers had become as routine as my morning coffee. That March evening, we sat around Barbara's dining table eating pot roast that was somehow both dry and swimming in grease. The apartment smelled of overcooked vegetables and the lavender air freshener Barbara used to mask the mustiness of old carpet. I had to skip my injection again this week, Barbara announced, cutting into her meat with dramatic precision. These treatments are just so expensive. Sometimes I wonder if the pain is worth bankrupting us. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. The previous Tuesday, $2,400 had left my account, specifically marked for her arthritis treatment. I turned to Dennis, but he was already redirecting the conversation with practiced ease. Kyle got a new motorcycle, he said, gesturing toward his younger brother. Show Janet the pictures. Kyle pulled out his phone, eager to display the chrome and black Harley he'd somehow acquired despite being unemployed for 6 months. Got a great deal from a friend who needed quick cash, he explained, scrolling through photos of himself posing with the bike in various locations around Queens. Barbara didn't seem to register the oddity of her broke son buying a motorcycle while she supposedly couldn't afford medical care. She just smiled at Kyle with the warmth she never directed at me, reaching over to pat his hand. You deserve nice things, sweetheart. You've been through so much. The next few weeks brought more peculiarities. Dennis's laptop, which had always been casually open on our kitchen counter, suddenly required a password. New client contracts, he explained when I asked. They're paranoid about confidentiality. Tech startup stuff, you know how it is. I didn't know how it was, actually. His consulting work had always been vague, but now it became actively secretive. Phone calls that used to happen at the kitchen table moved to the garage. Better reception out there, he claimed, though we'd never had signal problems in our house before. The bank statements that used to pile up on our entry table started disappearing. I'd see the mail carrier deliver them, but by evening they'd vanished. When I asked, Dennis would pat my shoulder with that reassuring touch he'd perfected. I'm organizing everything for taxes. Found this new system online. You focus on your big accounts at work. I'll handle our little household stuff. Our little household stuff that included thousands of dollars flowing out monthly. Late at night, I'd wake to find his side of the bed empty. Through the crack under his office door, I could see the blue glow of his computer screen and hear the rapid clicking of keys. When I'd pad barefoot down the hallway, the typing would stop. By the time I opened the door, he'd be scrolling through sports scores or reading news articles, looking up with that easy smile. Couldn't sleep. Didn't want to wake you with my tossing and turning. One Sunday in April, Robert scared us all. We were finishing Barbara's dry pound cake when he stood to clear plates and swayed dangerously. His face had gone gray, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool apartment. Dennis jumped up to steady him, guiding him to the couch while Barbara fluttered around, suddenly playing the concerned wife. "I'm fine," Robert insisted, though his hands trembled as he accepted a glass of water. "Just tired. Pulled a double at the store yesterday." "Why are you working so much?" I asked, genuinely confused. By my calculation, we'd sent $8,000 over the past 4 months. Enough to cover their rent and his medications with money left over. "Bills don't pay themselves," Robert said quietly, not meeting my eyes. Dennis's hand found my knee under the coffee table, squeezing firmly. Not affectionately, a warning. When I looked at him, his expression was carefully neutral, but something in his eyes told me to drop it. The drive home that night was silent except for the rain hitting the windshield. I watched the wipers sweep back and forth, trying to make sense of what I'd witnessed. Finally, I couldn't hold it in. "Where's the money going, Dennis?" "What money?" His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "The money for your dad's medication. For your mom's treatments. $8,000 in 4 months, and your father's working himself into the ground. There are other expenses," he said, his voice tight. "Things you don't know about. Old debts. Medical bills from before. It's complicated. Then uncomplicate it for me. Just trust me, okay? I'm handling it." Trust. Such a small word carrying so much weight. The breaking point came during Melissa's book club. Dennis's sister had insisted on hosting at our house, claiming our living room had better natural light. 7 women descended on a Tuesday evening, armed with wine bottles and opinions about a memoir none of them had actually finished reading. By the 3rd bottle of Pinot Grigio, Melissa had shifted from literary criticism to family gossip. Her voice carried into the kitchen where I was refilling the cheese platter. "Dennis has been so good to Anna lately," she gushed to her friend Carol. "You know she's been struggling since her boutique went under. But family helps family, right? Even exes. It's what makes the Whitmores special." My hand stilled on the brie knife. Carol made appropriate sympathetic noises. "How long were they together again?" 6 years. Can you believe it? Everyone thought they'd get married. Barbara still has the wedding magazines she collected for them. But timing, you know? Anna needed to find herself and Dennis needed to, well, he found Janet. The way she said my name like I was a consolation prize Dennis had settled for. I walked back into the living room carrying the cheese plate, my face carefully arranged in hostess neutrality. "Anna's having a hard time?" I asked casually, setting the plate on the coffee table. Melissa's eyes widened, suddenly realizing I'd been listening. The wine had made her careless. "Oh, just normal stuff. Starting over is hard." Dennis mentioned. I heard somewhere that she's doing better now." Dennis mentioned? "No. Maybe. I don't really remember where I heard it." She was backpedaling frantically now, shooting looks at the other women for help. "Probably Facebook. You know how news travels." That night, I lay in bed listening to Dennis breathe beside me. His sleep was peaceful, untroubled. His arm draped over my waist the way it had every night for 3 years. The same arm that held me during scary movies, that pulled me close in crowded places, that made me feel safe and chosen. But Melissa's words echoed in my mind. Family helps family, even exes. Dennis has been so good to Anna. I thought about the password on his laptop, the calls in the garage, the vanishing bank statements, Kyle's motorcycle, Robert's exhaustion, Barbara's skipped treatments despite my payments specifically marked for them. The numbers started arranging themselves in my head the way they did when I analyzed portfolios at work. Money in, money out patterns and discrepancies. $8,000 over 4 months, but no visible improvement in his parents' situation. Dennis's vague explanations. Barbara's continued complaints. And now Anna's name surfacing like a body that wouldn't stay buried. I turned to study Dennis's face in the darkness. He looked younger, asleep, almost innocent. The worry lines that creased his forehead during the day smoothed out at night. This was the man I'd married, who'd promised to love and cherish me, who'd stood at the altar and said I was his future. But futures, I was learning, could be built on very shaky foundations. Sleep became impossible after Melissa's wine-fueled revelation about Anna. I spent the rest of that week moving through my days like a ghost, analyzing portfolios at work while my mind churned through possibilities. Dennis noticed nothing, still kissing me goodbye each morning, still texting me heart emojis at lunch, still curling around me at night like everything was normal. Thursday morning, he left for what he called an early client meeting. I watched from our bedroom window as his car disappeared around the corner, then stood there for another 5 minutes to make sure he wouldn't circle back for something forgotten. The house felt different when I was alone with my suspicions. Every corner seemed to hold secrets, every drawer might contain evidence. His laptop sat on his desk in the home office, closed but not locked away. Dennis had grown comfortable in his deception, careless with his tools. I opened it and faced the password screen, my fingers hovering over the keys. Our anniversary date, nothing. His birthday, nothing. I tried variations of our street address, his mother's maiden name, even Barbara 1952 in desperation. Then, almost as a bitter joke, I typed, Anna 2020. The screen unlocked. My chest tightened as his desktop appeared, cluttered with folders and files I'd never seen. His email was already open in a browser tab, logged in and waiting. The most recent thread was from Barbara, sent just 3 hours ago. Janet seems suspicious at dinner. Keep her calm until my birthday. After that, we can reassess the arrangement. My hands trembled as I scrolled through their correspondence. Dozens of emails dating back 18 months, creating a timeline of deception. Barbara coaching Dennis on what to say when asking for money. Tell her it's for my arthritis. She won't question medical needs. Kyle joking about his investment portfolio, funded by his brother's brilliant long-term strategy. But the document that stopped my heart was a Google spreadsheet titled, Operation Keep Anna Afloat. The columns were meticulously organized. Date, amount received from J, actual distribution, cover story told. My name appeared like a punchline throughout. J believed medication story. J didn't question roof repair. J too busy with work to notice. I photographed the screen with my phone, then remembered Dennis could check browser history. No, I needed to be smarter. I forwarded everything to my private email account, the one I used for online shopping that Dennis didn't know about. 23 emails, 14 attachments, one devastating spreadsheet that detailed exactly how my money had been divided. Of the $42,000 I'd sent over 18 months, only $15,000 had actually gone to Barbara and Robert. The spreadsheet showed it clearly. Occasional payments for legitimate expenses, just enough to maintain the cover story. Anna had received $12,000, marked as Boutique Recovery Fund, and temporary support during transition. Kyle's $8,000 was labeled Investment Opportunities, with notes about cryptocurrency losses and sports betting debts. The remaining $7,000 was marked Administrative Costs, Dennis's fee for managing the con. I sat back in his chair, my professional pride wounded almost as much as my heart. I caught fraud for a living. I'd saved clients millions by spotting discrepancies others missed. Yet in my own home, I'd been blind to a conspiracy that involved my husband's entire family. The shower was still running upstairs. Dennis took long showers, one of those habits I'd once found endearing. 20 minutes minimum, sometimes 30 if he was thinking through problems. I had time to dig deeper. His sent folder revealed messages to Anna. Not love letters, something worse. Business-like updates on her financial support. This month's payment will be delayed. Janet's getting suspicious, need to be careful. And Anna's replies, grateful and oblivious. Thank Dennis. Tell your trust fund manager I appreciate the help during this tough time. Trust fund manager. They'd told Anna the money came from Dennis's fictional trust fund. I printed everything, the printer whirring like my racing thoughts. Bank statements from our joint account showing every transfer. Screenshots of the Google Doc. The email threads. By the time the shower stopped, I had 40 pages of evidence tucked in my work bag. I closed the laptop, my heart pounding as I heard Dennis's footsteps overhead. By the time he came downstairs, hair still damp, I was at the kitchen table with my coffee and the morning news on my tablet, looking like any other Thursday. Morning, beautiful, he said, kissing the top of my head. Sleep well. Like a baby, I lied, not looking up from my screen. The rest of the morning was agony. Dennis hummed while making his breakfast, complained about traffic reports, kissed me goodbye with the same lips that had been lying to me for 18 months. After his car pulled away, I called in sick to work. The first time in 3 years. I sat in my car in our driveway, windows down despite the April chill, spreading the printed pages across my passenger seat. With a yellow highlighter, I marked every lie, every diverted payment, every false emergency that had separated me from my money. The roof repair Barbara claimed cost $3,000. No contractor records, no permits filed with the city. Robert's emergency cardiac medication. The pharmacy had no record of the prescription. The apartment maintenance that Dennis said was urgent. Their building hadn't had any work done in 2 years according to public records I pulled up on my phone. My phone buzzed. Dennis checking in like the devoted husband he pretended to be. Hope you're feeling better, babe. Love you. I stared at those 2 words that had once meant everything. Now they felt like part of the con, emotional manipulation to keep me docile and generous. I texted back a simple thanks, then blocked his number temporarily so I could think without interruption. Lisa answered on the second ring. My college roommate had become a paralegal specializing in financial crimes. A coincidence that now felt like fate. Janet. How are you? It's been too long. I need your help, I said, my voice cracking for the first time all morning. I think my husband and his family have been stealing from me. Oh honey. Come over right now. Lisa's apartment was a 20-minute drive that I made in 15. She answered the door in sweats, her laptop already open on her coffee table. I handed her my folder of evidence and watched her expression shift from concern to shock to professional anger as she read. Janet, this isn't just theft. This is wire fraud. Conspiracy to commit fraud. When you cross state lines with electronic transfers based on false pretenses, it becomes federal. Federal. The kind where people go to prison. Your husband could get 5 years. Barbara and Kyle could be charged as co-conspirators. She pulled up legal databases on her laptop showing me similar cases. You have everything documented. This is a prosecutor's dream case. We spent 3 hours building a comprehensive file. Lisa helped me create a timeline, organize evidence, and prepare affidavits. She also gave me advice I didn't want but needed to hear. Don't confront them alone. Don't give them time to coordinate stories or destroy evidence. And whatever you do, don't let them know you know until you're ready to use it. Barbara's birthday dinner is Saturday, I said, an idea forming. The whole family will be there. Dennis, Kyle, Robert, even Melissa. Lisa smiled grimly. Public confrontation means witnesses. Smart. But Janet, are you ready for your marriage to end? Because there's no coming back from this. I thought about Dennis's password, Anna 2020. 4 years after their breakup, she was still important enough to be his digital key. I was the woman who paid the bills, but Anna was the one encoded in his memory. My marriage ended 18 months ago, I said. I just didn't know it yet. Friday passed in a blur of forced normalcy. I went to work, analyzed portfolios, attended meetings, all while my evidence folder sat locked in my desk drawer like a loaded weapon. Dennis texted throughout the day, casual check-ins that now felt like surveillance. How's your day going? Want Thai food tonight? Mom's excited about tomorrow. Each message another manipulation, another performance in our theatrical marriage. That evening, he found me in the bathroom applying mascara for our traditional pre-birthday dinner date night. His arms wrapped around my waist from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder as we looked at our reflection. You look beautiful, he murmured against my neck. Mom doesn't deserve you at her party. The irony of that statement made me bite my tongue until I tasted copper. Saturday arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of April day that couldn't decide if it wanted to be winter or spring. I dressed carefully, professional but not threatening, the navy dress Dennis always said made my eyes look incredible. If this was going to be my last performance as the dutiful daughter-in-law, I'd look the part. The drive to Queens felt longer than usual. Dennis filled the silence with chatter about his fictional client meetings, upcoming projects that would finally stabilize his income. His hand found mine at a red light, squeezing gently. Thank you for being so patient with my family. I know Mom can be difficult. 3 years of difficult, I said quietly. It'll get better. She just needs time. Time. As if 18 months and $42,000 hadn't been enough. Barbara's apartment building loomed gray against the darker sky. We climbed the 3 flights slowly, Dennis carrying wine and flowers while I carried my purse, heavier than usual with my phone fully charged and recording app ready. The stairwell smelled of cabbage and old carpet, someone's television blaring through thin walls. Dennis knocked rather than using his key, our arrival choreographed like everything else. Barbara opened the door wearing her best dress, the purple one she saved for church and special occasions. Her face lit up seeing Dennis, then dimmed slightly registering me behind him. "There's my birthday boy." She pulled Dennis into a hug that lasted uncomfortably long, then turned to me with that practiced smile. "Janet. You came. Wouldn't miss it, Barbara." The apartment had been transformed. Her good china was out, the table extended with the leaf she only used for holidays. Streamers hung from the ceiling, and the smell of pot roast competed with her aggressive lavender air freshener. This wasn't just a birthday dinner. This was an event, a production. Kyle was already sprawled on the couch, beer in hand, that expensive watch catching the light every time he lifted the bottle. He'd styled his hair and wore a new shirt, playing the part of successful young man rather than unemployed gambler living off my transfers. "Janet." Robert rose from his recliner, genuine warmth in his tired eyes. He looked worse than last week, grayer, more fragile. "You look lovely, dear." Melissa arrived minutes later with her husband Tom, who immediately parked himself in front of the television with Kyle. She hugged everyone except me. I got an air kiss that missed by 6 inches. "Anna sent a card," Barbara announced, waving a pink envelope like a trophy. "Isn't that thoughtful?" Even with her busy new position, she remembered. She read it aloud, every word a deliberate knife. "Dearest Barbara, happy birthday to someone who's been like a second mother to me. Thank you for all your support during my difficult times. Love always, Anna." Dennis's jaw tightened. He knew this was too much even for Barbara. But he said nothing, just opened wine bottles while I arranged appetizers nobody would eat. Dinner was Barbara's greatest performance yet. Story after story about Anna's accomplishments, each one presented directly to me like evidence in a trial. Anna's promotion at the nonprofit. Anna's volunteer work with disadvantaged youth. Anna's natural ability to make everyone feel special, unlike some people who just throw money at problems. That last comment made Dennis flinch, but still he stayed silent. The cake came out, grocery store yellow cake with too sweet frosting declaring, "Happy 72nd Barbara," in purple script. We sang while Barbara basked in attention, her eyes locked on mine during the entire song like a predator watching prey. After she blew out the candles, after the obligatory applause died down, Barbara set down her cake server and turned to face me fully. The room felt suddenly smaller, everyone leaning in slightly like they'd been waiting for this moment. "You know, Janet," she began, her voice carrying that false sweetness that preceded every insult. "I've been thinking a lot lately about compatibility. About how some people just fit, while others never quite manage it." Dennis grabbed my hand under the table. Not in support, in warning. Barbara continued, each word carefully chosen. Anna understood Dennis in a way that was special. They had this connection, this natural rhythm. She knew what he needed without being told. She made him better just by existing. "Mom," Dennis said quietly, but she raised her hand to silence him. "I'm just being honest. Janet deserves honesty, doesn't she?" Barbara's smile was razor sharp. "You try, dear, we can all see you try. But you'll never be as good as Anna. You'll never measure up to what she and Dennis had. Some things just can't be forced." The room held its breath. Kyle smirked behind his beer. Melissa studied her cake with fake intensity. Tom kept watching football. Robert stared into his coffee like it held escape routes. And Dennis sat there, my hand in his, and said absolutely nothing. That's when I heard my own voice, steady and clear. "Then tell Anna to pay all your bills. I'm done funding your lifestyle." The words landed like grenades in the silent room. Barbara's triumphant smile froze, then crumbled into confusion. What money? We never got a single dollar from you." The lie was so brazen, so absolute, that for a second I wondered if we were all living in different realities. But then I saw Dennis go pale, saw Kyle's smirk die, saw Melissa's eyes widen with panic. I pulled out my phone with deliberate calm, opening my banking app with steady fingers. "Should we review the transfers, Barbara? Or would you prefer to maintain this fiction that you've never received money from me?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Barbara stammered, but her voice had lost its edge. "January 2023, I began, my voice carrying the same professional tone I used presenting to clients. $2,400 for Barbara's arthritis treatment. February 2023, $2,300 for apartment repairs. March 2023, $2,500 for Robert's medication. Each month fell into the silence like stones into water. April, May, June. The numbers adding up while faces around the table transformed. Barbara's confusion shifted to something else, something like fear. Kyle set down his beer with a shaking hand. Melissa pressed herself back in her chair as if trying to disappear. July 2023, $3,000 for emergency roof repair. August, September, October. Should I continue? 18 months of transfers. Barbara. $42,000 total, all carefully documented, all sent to Dennis for your supposed medical expenses. Robert's coffee cup rattled against the saucer as he set it down. His voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper but carried the weight of mountains. Dennis, did you give us Janet's money? The question hung in the air between father and son like a blade waiting to drop. Dennis's mouth opened and closed, searching for words that might soften what was coming. His face had gone the color of old paper, and his hand released mine to grip the edge of the table. It's complicated, he finally managed, the words barely audible. Uncomplicate it, I said, my voice steady as granite. Dennis looked around the table like he was searching for allies, but found only waiting faces. Even Barbara seemed to hold her breath, though whether from fear or anticipation I couldn't tell. Anna reached out to me 6 months after you and I got married, he began, his words tumbling out in a rush. Her boutique was failing. She'd invested everything, her savings, loans from friends, maxed out credit cards. She was going to lose her apartment. So you gave her my money, I stated, not asking. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Dennis's voice cracked, revealing the boy beneath the man. Mom said she thought, we all believed Anna just needed time to get back on her feet. That she and I were meant to be together and you were. I was what, Dennis? He couldn't meet my eyes. Convenient. Stable. Someone who could help during the transition. Transition. There it was, the word that reduced our entire marriage to a temporary arrangement. A bridge between Dennis's past and his supposedly inevitable future with Anna. You knew, I turned to Barbara, whose face had transformed into something I'd never seen before. Not the sneering superiority I was used to, but something harder, more calculating. You orchestrated this whole thing. Barbara straightened in her chair, and when she spoke, her voice had lost all pretense of sweetness. Anna and Dennis belonged together. Anyone could see that. You were never supposed to be permanent, Janet. You're too cold, too focused on numbers and careers. Anna understood family. She understood what Dennis needed. What he needed was my money, apparently. Your money was the least you could contribute, Barbara shot back, her mask completely gone now. I taught Dennis exactly how to approach you. When to ask, how much to request, what stories would work. Every month we'd review what worked and what didn't. Janet responded well to Dad's health issues. I'd tell him. Use that angle more. Tom had muted the television. Even the neighbor's TV seemed quieter, as if the entire building was listening to Barbara's confession. You coached your son to defraud his wife? Robert's voice was barely recognizable, thick with something between rage and grief. I coached him to secure his future, Barbara corrected, lifting her chin with astounding pride. Anna is his soulmate. Janet was just a stepping stone. A well-paid stepping stone who could fund Anna's recovery and their eventual reunion. Mom, stop, Dennis pleaded, but Barbara was beyond stopping. 3 years we've been planning this. 3 years of enduring your presence at my table, pretending you belonged here. Every dinner, every holiday, watching you sit in the chair that should have been Anna's. But we knew it was temporary. Once Anna was stable, once her business debts were paid, Dennis could divorce you and be with the woman he actually loves. Each word was a calculated blow, delivered with the precision of someone who'd been rehearsing this speech in her mind for months. The strange thing was, instead of feeling destroyed, I felt oddly liberated. The mask was off. The pretense was over. This was the real Barbara, the real family I'd married into. Robert's chair scraped against the floor as he stood, his whole body shaking. You let me work double shifts. You let me skip my heart medication. You watched me nearly collapse from exhaustion, all while you were stealing from Janet to give to that woman. We weren't stealing, Dennis protested weakly. It's marital assets. Community property. I had a right. To lie. To commit fraud. To document false expenses. I pulled out my phone again, scrolling to the Google Doc-eyed screenshot. Should I read from your own records, Dennis? March 15th. Told Jay the roof was leaking, actually for Anna's rent. April 2nd. Dad's medication story worked perfectly. Jay didn't question the amount. Kyle, who'd been silent until now, suddenly knocked over his beer bottle trying to stand. The liquid spread across Barbara's good tablecloth, but nobody moved to clean it. This is insane, he muttered, his eyes darting toward the door. I thought the money was from Dennis's consulting. Mom said he was doing really well. Doing well. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your brother hasn't had a legitimate client in 8 months. That watch you're wearing? That motorcycle? Paid for with money I sent for your father's heart medication. Kyle's hand went automatically to the watch, a Rolex that gleamed under the dining room light. Mom said Dennis gave me an investment opportunity. Cryptocurrency. I was going to pay it back when it went up. $8,000, Kyle. You took $8,000 that was supposed to keep your father healthy. I didn't know. Kyle's voice pitched high with panic. Mom handled everything. She said it was family money that we all deserved a share. A share of what? Robert's voice boomed, making everyone jump. I'd never heard him raise his voice before. A share of theft? A share of fraud? My own family conspiring behind my back while I worked myself into the ground. You were never supposed to work those extra shifts, Barbara said, her tone shifting to irritation as if Robert was ruining her carefully laid plans. If you just accepted that we needed help. Help? This isn't help. This is theft. Grand larceny. Wire fraud. Robert's face had gone from gray to red, veins standing out on his neck. Melissa finally spoke up, her voice small. I didn't know about the money, but I knew about Anna. Dennis has been meeting her for coffee every week. Sometimes dinner. I thought Janet knew. Another piece clicked into place. All those client meetings, those networking events, those late nights at the office. How many were actually spent with Anna? Every week. I asked Dennis directly. He nodded miserably. We needed to coordinate the payments. Make sure her creditors were being paid in the right order. It was business. Business, I repeated. Is that what you call it when you password protect your laptop with her name and the year you met? Dennis's head snapped up. You went through my computer? Anna 2020. Really, Dennis? Not even creative enough to use something that wasn't about her. Barbara stood up, trying to regain control of her narrative. None of this matters. Anna and Dennis will be together eventually. You can't stop destiny, Janet. You were always just convenient. Yes, Barbara, you've made that crystal clear. The convenient fool who funded your son's ex-girlfriend's lifestyle while you all laughed behind my back. We never laughed, Dennis said quietly. No? Then what do you call the family group chat I was never added to? The one where you all discussed how to manage Janet? How to keep me comfortable but controlled. Dennis's silence was all the confession I needed. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder Lisa had helped me prepare. Thick with evidence, tabbed with colored sticky notes, professional as any case file I'd present at Hartford Financial. You want to know what this is? I set it on Barbara's birthday cake, right in the frosting. This is 18 months of wire fraud, documented and verified. Barbara reached for the folder, but I placed my hand on top of it. Not yet. First, you're going to listen. I opened to the first tab, holding up the printed emails for everyone to see. Email from Barbara to Dennis, February 12th. Tell Janet the roof is leaking. She won't verify with the landlord. Email from Dennis to Kyle, March 3rd. Mom says you need $8,000. Janet thinks it's for Dad's medication, so act accordingly if she asks. You had no right to read private emails, Barbara started, but her voice had lost its power. Actually, I had every right to read emails discussing how to steal my money. I flipped to the next section. Bank statements showing every transfer, $42,000 total. Each one annotated with what I was told versus where the money actually went. My attorney, yes, Barbara, I have an attorney, calls this documentary evidence of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Attorney. Dennis's voice cracked. Lisa Brennan, specializing in financial crimes. She's reviewed everything. I pulled out my phone, showing them Lisa's contact information. She's waiting for my call. One word from me and this becomes a federal investigation. The room had gone so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the neighbor's television playing a game show through the walls, someone's footsteps in the apartment above. Federal. Kyle whispered, his face draining of color. When you use electronic transfers across state lines based on fraudulent pretenses, it becomes a federal crime. Dennis could get 5 years in prison. Barbara and Kyle as co-conspirators could face 3 years each. Prison. Kyle's expensive watch caught the light as his hands trembled. But I didn't, Mom said. You took $8,000 that you knew came from somewhere suspicious. You participated in family meetings about managing Janet. You're on the group chat discussing how to keep me from discovering the truth. That's conspiracy. Barbara tried to rally. You're bluffing. No prosecutor would take this case. We're family. We're family, I corrected. And prosecutors love cases with this much documentation. But here's the part you're really going to hate, Barbara. I paused, savoring the moment before delivering the blow I'd been saving. Anna knows everything. The silence that followed was beautiful. Barbara's mouth fell open. Dennis's head snapped up. Even Robert, who'd been staring at the table in silent rage, looked at me in surprise. That's impossible, Barbara said, but uncertainty colored her voice. 2 days ago I contacted Anna. Sent her screenshots of the Google Doc, the emails, everything showing where Dennis's mysterious trust fund money actually came from. Would you like to hear her response? I pulled up the email on my phone, reading Anna's words aloud. Janet, I'm absolutely horrified. Dennis told me the money came from a family trust his grandmother left him. I had no idea it was coming from you. I'm willing to return what I can and testify about what Dennis told me. No woman deserves to be treated this way. She's lying, Dennis said desperately. Anna wouldn't. Anna has more integrity than this entire family combined. She's already sent me records of every payment she received, thinking it was from your fictional trust fund. She's prepared to sign an affidavit confirming you lied to both of us. Barbara sank back into her chair, the purple dress that had seemed so regal now making her look like a deflated party balloon. The queen of manipulation, realizing her chosen princess had switched sides. But the best part? I continued, pulling out a printed text exchange. Anna sent me screenshots of Dennis's texts to her. Don't worry about paying me back, my trust fund is huge. Grandma wanted me to help people I care about. Janet doesn't know about the trust, she might feel weird about me having family money. I looked directly at Dennis. You lied to everyone. To me about where the money was going. To Anna about where it came from. To your parents about... Actually, I'm not sure you told your parents any truth at all. Tom had abandoned all pretense of watching TV, staring at the unfolding disaster with his mouth open. Melissa was crying silently, mascara running down her cheeks. Robert's hands were clenched into fists on the table, his knuckles white. So here's what's going to happen, I said, pulling out the documents Lisa had prepared. Option 1. Dennis signs this post-nuptial agreement acknowledging the $42,000 debt. Barbara and Robert sign these affidavits confirming they never received the money I sent for their expenses. Kyle documents every cent he took and agrees to a repayment plan. Everyone cooperates and this stays a civil matter. Option 2. Barbara asked, though she clearly didn't want to know. Option 2 is I call Lisa right now. She contacts the FBI tomorrow morning. They freeze your accounts, investigate your finances, and you explain to federal agents how you orchestrated 18 months of wire fraud. I spread 3 documents on the table, pushing aside birthday cake plates and Barbara's anniversary china. Post-nuptial agreement for Dennis. Affidavits for Barbara and Robert. Financial disclosure for Kyle. This is extortion, Barbara said weakly. This is consequence, I corrected. Something none of you have faced before. Dennis reached for the pen with a shaking hand. If I sign this, what happens? We divorce. You repay the money from your retirement fund and future earnings. You stay out of prison. You get to keep your professional reputation, what's left of it. And if I don't sign? Then you explain to the FBI, your employer, and every future romantic partner why you have a federal fraud conviction. Dennis signed his name, each letter looking like it physically hurt him to write. His signature, which I'd once found so elegant on our marriage certificate, now looked like the scrawl of a defeated man. Barbara took the pen next, her hand trembling so badly she could barely hold it. I never thought. No, you never thought I'd find out. You never thought the convenient fool with the paycheck would figure out your scheme. She signed, tears finally breaking through her composure. Not tears of remorse. Barbara wasn't capable of that. Tears of rage that her perfect plan had failed. Kyle signed quickly, eager to make this nightmare end. His Rolex caught the light one last time as he pushed the document back to me. Robert was the last to sign, and when he looked up at me, his eyes were red-rimmed. Janet, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I know you didn't, Robert. You're the only innocent person at this table. I gathered the signed documents, placing them carefully back in my folder. The evidence of their conspiracy now joined by their written confessions. I stood, picking up my purse, feeling lighter than I had in 18 months. Wait, Barbara said, trying one last manipulation. Family doesn't do this to family. I turned at the doorway, looking back at the wreckage of Barbara's birthday dinner. The cake with evidence folders crushing its frosting. The signed confessions among the china. The family that had conspired against me now turning on each other with accusations and blame. Family doesn't steal from family either, I said. Happy birthday, Barbara. I walked down those 3 flights of stairs and out into the April drizzle, leaving behind the wreckage of Barbara's birthday dinner. My phone started buzzing before I even reached my car. Dennis calling, texting, the family group chat I'd never been part of suddenly desperate to include me. I turned the phone off completely and sat in my car, rain pattering against the windshield, feeling something between exhaustion and exhilaration. The drive home was surreal. The same route I'd taken with Dennis just hours earlier, but now I was alone, my marriage effectively over, my evidence folder on the passenger seat like a silent witness to what had just happened. I stopped at a red light and caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. My makeup was still perfect, not a tear shed. Strong or numb, I couldn't tell. Lisa was waiting at my house when I arrived, sitting on my porch with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. I figured you'd need this, she said, standing to hug me. How did it go? They all signed. I held up the folder. Every last one of them. We sat in my kitchen, soon to be only my kitchen, while I recounted every detail. Lisa took notes, already planning the next legal steps. File for divorce Monday morning, she advised. Strike while they're still scared. Dennis showed up at midnight, using his key one last time. I was still awake, expecting this. He found me in the living room with Lisa, who'd stayed for protection and witness purposes. Janet, please, we need to talk, he begged, his face puffy from crying. Talk to my attorney, Lisa said coolly. And leave your tea on the table. This is my house too. Not after Monday, I said. You signed a post-nuptial agreement acknowledging debt and fraud. No judge will let you stay here. He stood there in our doorway, my doorway, looking like a stranger. Had he always been this small, this pathetic? Or had I just been too in love to see it? I loved you, he said quietly. You loved my paycheck, I corrected. There's a difference. Monday morning, Lisa filed the divorce papers while I went to work. Sarah, my assistant, took one look at my face and brought me extra strong tea without asking questions. By noon, the news had somehow spread through the office. Not the details, just that I was divorcing Dennis. My boss, Margaret, called me into her office. I heard about your situation, she said carefully. Do you need time off? No, I need to work. I need normal. She studied me for a moment. There's a senior partner position opening next month. I wasn't going to mention it yet, but given everything, maybe focusing on your career would be good for you. Dennis was served at his parents' apartment that afternoon. He called me 17 times before I blocked his number. Then Barbara started calling from her landline, leaving voicemails that progressed from pleading to threatening to sobbing. I saved them all. More evidence just in case. By Thursday, Dennis had liquidated his retirement fund. $30,000 appeared in my account with a memo. Partial payment per agreement. The remaining $12,000 would come in monthly installments of $500, though I doubted I'd ever see all of it. Kyle texted me that weekend, lost my job because of you. You never had a job, I replied, then blocked him too. The real surprise came 3 weeks later. Anna called, her voice tentative. Janet? I know this is weird, but I was wondering if we could meet. I have some things to tell you. We met at a coffee shop downtown, both of us awkward until Anna said, so we both married into the Whitmore dysfunction, and we burst out laughing. Technically, I never married in, she corrected herself. Thank God. Anna showed me years of emails from Dennis, dating back to their relationship and continuing through my marriage. The recent ones about his trust fund were just the latest in a long pattern of lies. He'd been lying to her throughout their relationship too, about his job prospects, his family's financial situation, even about why they broke up. Barbara told me you cheated on him, I said. Anna nearly spit out her coffee. What? He cheated on me. With my roommate. Barbara knew. She helped him cover it up. We sat there for 3 hours comparing notes, uncovering lies, realizing how deeply we'd both been manipulated. When we finally stood to leave, Anna said, we should do this monthly. Like survivors group therapy. Our first official dinner was at an Italian place, where we toasted with expensive wine I could finally afford since I wasn't funding Dennis's family anymore. To Barbara's matchmaking skills, Anna said, raising her glass. She wanted Dennis to end up with me so badly she forgot to ask if I wanted him back. What did you tell him when he reached out after the birthday disaster? I told him I was testifying in your civil suit and to lose my number. The civil suit was Lisa's idea. Since they'd all admitted to the fraud in writing, we could sue for damages beyond just the stolen money. Emotional distress, financial manipulation, conspiracy to defraud, Lisa listed, building her case. Dennis's consulting business, already struggling, completely collapsed when word got out about the fraud. Apparently, clients don't trust financial consultants who steal from their spouses. He moved back in with Barbara and Robert, sleeping in his childhood bedroom at 34. Surrounded by high school trophies and memories of when he had potential. Barbara, according to Melissa, who still texted me occasionally, had become unbearable to live with. Without my money cushioning their lifestyle, she had to face the reality of their situation. A fixed income that barely covered rent, no savings, and a son who couldn't support himself, let alone them. Robert was the only one who showed genuine remorse. 2 months after the birthday disaster, he sent me a letter. Handwritten, formal, the way his generation communicated important things. Dear Janet, it read. I've spent weeks trying to find the right words. There aren't any. What my family did to you is unforgivable. You deserved better from all of us, especially from me. I should have protected you. Instead, I benefited from their crimes while remaining willfully ignorant. I'm deeply sorry. I helped Robert apply for Medicare assistance programs, sending him information about prescription coverage he qualified for but didn't know existed. He never asked, I just did it. Not for Dennis or Barbara, but for Robert, who'd been as much a victim as I had been. His Christmas card arrived in December, just a simple store-bought card with one line written inside. You deserved better from all of us. No request for forgiveness, no manipulation, just acknowledgement. I kept Robert's Christmas card on my refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a sunflower. The only reminder I allowed myself of the Whitmore family. January arrived with snow and silence, the kind of peace that comes after surviving a hurricane. My new routine was simple. Work, therapy, and learning to be alone without feeling lonely. Dr. Morrison's office became my Wednesday sanctuary. She was a small woman with silver hair who never rushed our sessions, even when I spent 20 minutes sobbing over how I'd missed such obvious signs. You weren't blind, Janet. You were trusting. There's a difference, she said during our 3rd month together. Your instinct to help family in need wasn't wrong. Their exploitation of that instinct was. We unpacked everything. My need to be the perfect wife, the way I'd rationalized every red flag as a cultural difference or temporary situation. I analyze million-dollar portfolios, I told her one afternoon. I catch fraud for a living. How did I miss this in my own home? Because you weren't looking for it there. We don't audit the people we love. The anger came in waves. Some days I'd be fine, focused on work and moving forward. Then I'd see a couple holding hands at a coffee shop, and rage would surge through me so hot I'd have to leave. The humiliation was worse, knowing that for 18 months, an entire family had been laughing at my expense, calling me convenient, planning my replacement while spending my money. The grief is real too, Dr. Morrison reminded me. You lost the family you thought you had, the marriage you believed in, the future you'd planned. Let yourself mourn. February brought news through the grapevine. Melissa still texted occasionally, unable to resist sharing family drama. Barbara's arthritis had flared severely. Without consistent treatment, she could barely open jars, struggled with stairs. The bitter part of me felt vindicated. The human part remembered that I would have gladly paid for her medication if they'd just been honest. Kyle had found work at an Amazon warehouse, night shifts that paid $15 an hour. He'd sold the motorcycle, pawned the watch, moved into a studio apartment that Melissa described as depressing. His restitution payments arrived monthly, $200 that probably meant he was living on ramen and hope. Dennis tried dating, according to Melissa. 3 first dates that never led to second ones. He doesn't understand why women ghost him after they Google him, she wrote. Mom keeps telling him it's their loss. The wire fraud documentation I'd filed with the divorce had become public record. Any woman with basic internet skills could find it within minutes. Dennis Whitmore, financial consultant who defrauded his wife. Not exactly dating profile material. March marked 6 months since the birthday confrontation. Anna and I had our regular dinner at a Thai restaurant, our friendship evolving from shared trauma to genuine connection. She'd started dating someone new, a teacher who knew her whole story and didn't care. He actually thanked Dennis, she laughed. Said if Dennis hadn't been such a disaster we'd never have met. That night, Anna suggested something that changed everything. We should help other women. How many are out there right now funding their husband's secrets, thinking they're crazy for being suspicious? We started small. A Facebook group called Receipt Keepers for women who suspected financial abuse in their relationships. Within a week we had 50 members. Within a month 300. Women sharing stories that echoed mine. Money disappearing, elaborate lies, family conspiracies. I wrote our first guide, Red Flags in Financial Abuse. Anna contributed, When Family Becomes the Enemy. We fielded questions, reviewed bank statements, helped women document their suspicions. What began as processing our own trauma transformed into something larger. My promotion to senior partner came through in April. Margaret called me into her office with champagne. Your handling of your personal situation showed remarkable professionalism, she said. You turned a crisis into education, helping protect our clients from similar schemes. That's leadership. The raise was substantial. More than enough to cover what I'd lost to the Whitmores. I celebrated by buying a new apartment, smaller than the house I'd shared with Dennis but entirely mine. No memories in the walls, no ghosts in the corners. Moving day was emotional. Anna helped, along with 2 women from Receipt Keepers who'd become real friends. We painted the living room a soft blue, hung curtains that Dennis would have hated, arranged furniture without considering anyone else's opinion. This is your revenge, Anna said, looking around the space. Living well, helping others, becoming who you were meant to be without them. May brought an unexpected message from Robert. Not a letter this time, but an email through the Receipt Keepers website. Janet, I wanted you to know that I've left Barbara. Living with my brother in New Jersey now. The birthday dinner opened my eyes to more than just the money. Thank you for showing me the truth even though it hurt. I'm getting help for my health through the programs you suggested. Robert. I read it 3 times before responding with a simple, wishing you health and peace. Barbara's empire had truly crumbled. Without Robert's social security supplementing their income, without my money flowing in, without Kyle contributing, she was alone with Dennis in that apartment. 2 people who'd built their relationship on deceiving others, now stuck with only each other. By June, Receipt Keepers had become a registered nonprofit. We held our first in-person workshop at the community center, teaching women how to track finances, document suspicious activity, and protect themselves legally. 30 women attended. 3 were actively planning exits from abusive financial situations. You saved my life, one woman told me after showing me spreadsheets she'd created based on our template. I thought I was paranoid. You showed me I was right. Standing in my apartment that evening, windows open to summer air, I thought about revenge. It wasn't the dramatic confrontation at Barbara's birthday, though that had felt satisfying. It wasn't the legal documents or the recovered money. It wasn't even watching their lives fall apart without my financial support. Real revenge was this: transforming pain into purpose. Building a life they couldn't touch. Helping other women avoid my mistakes. Creating a chosen family of survivors who understood that documentation beats gaslighting every time. Barbara had been so wrong about one thing in particular. She'd said I was too cold, too focused on numbers and careers. But those very qualities, the analytical mind, the attention to detail, the insistence on documentation, had saved me. And now they were saving others. My phone buzzed with a receipt keeper's notification. Another woman joining, another story shared, another person learning that suspicious feelings usually mean something and receipts never lie. I thought about Dennis, probably sitting in that apartment listening to Barbara complain about her arthritis. About Kyle heading to another warehouse shift. About the family that had united to deceive me, now fractured beyond repair. Then I closed the notification and made dinner in my kitchen in my apartment in my new life. Barbara was right about one thing. I'd never be as good as Anna. I was better. I was free. If this story of financial revenge had you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Janet pulled out her banking app at Barbara's birthday dinner and started reading those transfers aloud. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.